Good afternoon, Dr. Hibert and Dr. Crawford. My name is Tammy Oliphant, and I will be moderating this session, but I am joined by my colleagues. At the far end of the table is Tony Samick from the School of Library and Information Studies. Next to her is Pat Demure from the Department of English and Film Studies, and my colleague Ali Shiri, also from the School of Library and Information Studies. So to begin with, I'm just going to introduce you to each other and to our audience. So I'm delighted that we have Dr. Alice Crawford joining us from the University of St. Andrews Library, St. Andrews, Scotland, where she is currently the Digital Humanities Research Librarian. And our second discussant is Dr. Mario Hibert, lecturer at the Department of Comparative Literature and Librarianship, Faculty of Philosophy, University of Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your papers. Very thought-provoking, very insightful, lots of ideas and issues to discuss. And I wanted to begin the discussion with a question for both of you. Dr. Crawford, you discussed the relationship between emotion and how people conceive of libraries. And Dr. Hibert talks about passion and re-eroticizing the profession. So he talks about these concepts in terms of the profession of librarianship. So I'm hoping that you can each speak to or expand upon what makes these central concepts of emotion, creativity, central to how we think and talk about libraries and how we think and talk about librarianship as a profession.
It's a big question, but an important one to answer, I think. I discussed the way in which librarians at both the public level and the academic level are very determined to analyze their roles and how unsuccessful at the end of the day they are at making sense of their roles. Which left me at the end of my argument with the feeling that what we do have is emotion. That is what seems to make libraries important to us. And I was very pleased to find that there was a point of contact between my own discussion and Mario's, where I am interested in how energetic librarians are in trying to find new roles for themselves, to forge a new path for themselves in the digital world. The energies I have identified seem to be in a way pastoral, in that librarians in the public sector look after their patrons, encourage them with job application, with adapting to new technology, with literacy, that kind of thing. And in academic libraries, they make sure that library provision adapts to new research methods. They have that energy and that passion to do those things. They are, in a way, heroic in their search for a role for themselves. And I noticed in Mario's paper that is trying to describe, trying to delineate a role for librarians which defines a more political and activist role for themselves. And there does seem to be a point of contact between the energies I've identified in librarians in my own fields and the energies that Mario was discussing as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to follow up on that, but I will let Mario speak first.
I'll begin defending my approach by the fact that I have a serious issue in my classroom. I have to find a way how to engage my students to think and to rethink the libraries at the age, and of course, public life. So I realized that sometimes ethic has a much lower impact than talking about the politics. So I engage myself more and more with the discussions with my students about politics, because I realize they somehow react better on my approach when which includes more political thinking. Then we develop the context in which we can, in which I can moderate even myself and recreate my thinking about what I'm going to do next in a classroom by trying to find specific and problematic issues that correlates internet and libraries. So we usually end up with or at least I try to engage them to think about the notions that I have been trying to explain in my paper. So I think actually my belief is that if we are going to reinvent or reshape thinking about libraries in digital age, we should focus our approach to the topic of and to the role of librarian, not anymore to focus ourselves on institutions. Mm-hmm. So I used in my text thinking of Shiva Vaidyanathan, who says that in digital age public institutions should admit a public failure. So if we see how it's hard to cope with the issue that Google is, let's say, the first choice of the users, we can't compete with Google. We can't compete with the corporatist logic. So I should try to find the new heroes for the new generation. And so I end up with discovering the correspondence between hacker ethics and library ethics. And that's how politics became the central issue of my critical thinking about libraries.
There's so many different directions that I could go in just from these responses, but what I did want to pursue, what I also found quite interesting about your talks is that Dr. Crawford talks about the library, and again, as an institution, as a place of safety. And that word safety came up quite often in your talk. And Dr. Hibert talks about protecting. So the protecting users from the exploitive capital, talking about protecting intellectual privacy of users. And Dr. Crawford, you mentioned just in your first response, thinking about new roles for librarians, and I'm wondering if you can talk to or extend upon this idea of protection within the safety of an institution such as a library.
Yes, that struck me very much myself when I was listening to Mario's paper. I felt rather guilty when I realised that I had written in my own paper about how academic librarians rush to compare the services they provide with the behemoths of Google and Microsoft and Amazon, and the speed and slickness with which they provide their services. We automatically, or I had automatically assumed that librarians ought to rise to that standard and provide slick, quick services for their users, which would compare with those services that were being provided by Google, etc. And I hadn't quite thought, I should have thought harder, but I hadn't realised that, of course, in doing so, we are being very influenced by standards outside the library world and standards which are not necessarily appropriate for what we want to deliver to our patrons. We may be delivering them into an unsafe environment where the data about themselves is extremely vulnerable. So we should be taking more care. We should be slowing down. We should be thinking. We should be using our intellectual faculties more energetically to think. Are we doing the right thing here? Should we provide a different kind of space? A non-technological space, possibly, a space away from Google, Amazon, Microsoft, etc., where people can enjoy an analog environment, think about the content of what they're reading, enjoy print books, enjoy human company in a coffee shop within a library. These are all things that library spaces can offer, but the intellectual space that libraries can offer as well should be safer than we are currently making it. And I think that's a very good point that Mario makes, and we should think about it more.
Mario, would you like to comment?
My thoughts actually came out from as I said before, from the classroom. I mean, I would rather try or feel that I'm capable to engage my students in an analog world, in the wealth of the past paradigm. But then I realized I constantly approach a fact that they are digital natives, and that I have to reinvent the language appropriate for their attention. That's how I realize when I want to make my point, I have to first talk about the internet, about the piracy, about Snowden, about things that they are familiar with, and then to try to make some broader or specific connections with the past. So privacy is, of course, an ultimate political issue of today, and I enjoy actually exposing themselves to the facts of digital environment. So the issue of safety is, of course, still should be the dominant issue when we speak about the communication in general. But of course, privacy is the oil of the 21st century, and somehow we should redefine the old concepts and the referent points of our profession in a new light. So I believe that only if we, let's say, stop thinking about the metadata as in a technical context, as a descriptive, and try to approach to the metadata as a normative now, then we create an environment in which we can, through the library and information science discourse, can involve the issues of economy, of politics, of philosophy. Actually, it's about the core interdisciplinarity of our domain.
I think librarians are uniquely in a uniquely ambivalent position with regard to Google, etc. I think of myself, my own situation, where I love the Google Books project. I love the way that Google has done this absolutely massive digitization project. The fact that all these pre-1900 books are so freely available online. I think this is a massively generous act of the digitization process. I use the books on the Internet Archive, put there largely by the Google Books digitization project. And yet, yes, I do have to be careful. We all do need to be careful about what Google is doing. We are on the cusp of being, yes, very much in favour of what they do, and yet needing to be critical. Yeah, we have to walk that tightrope, really, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. I was around 20 years ago when the internet came out and doing my undergraduate degree, and it was really exciting that you could find that group of people that had a small group of people that had the same arcane interest that you did. And now when I go online, it really feels like the internet is using me and using my data. And I really love the phrasing, Mario, that you used in your paper about the vulture industries, and your call for resistance. And I was thinking about your talk, Dr. Crawford, and you're talking about Wikipedia. Dr. Hibert was talking about repositories, hackathons. So I'm just wondering what you see as the future when we're more and more academic research is moving online, either to repositories, the role of scholarly publishers in this context, and then thinking about services like ResearchGate and Academia Edu. Like, it's a complex environment, but I'm wondering, what your thoughts are on how what Mario is calling for is this type of resistance, how that might play out in terms of scholarly publishing.
Yes, I feel these conflicts in the course of my own day-to-day job, in fact, because colleagues of mine, of course, are involved in the open access movement. They are responsible within the library for making sure that material is deposited on our institutional repository on an open access basis. And I work very closely with these colleagues to encourage our academics to do that. And at the same time, I am the copyright coordinator for the library. So I'm on the one hand involved with this very open process whereby academics make their material available, they share it as openly as they possibly can, and on the other hand, I am having to teach people about how to restrict access to things, to try to make sure that intellectual property is protected, not exploited. So my day-to-day job involves having to have a foot in both camps, encouraging openness and yet ensuring that there is protection for people as well, promoting Creative Commons licenses, right, which are, the nearest thing we have to sharing, but not sharing too much. Yes, this we do need to protect our data, but we need to be generous with it as well. I think that may be where Mario might want to say something.
I have to emphasize that I'm not, I can only talk from my position, and the position is, and the fact is that I live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we have a really specific issue with the access to information. Our academia is we have a very limited access to the databases, let's say. So it's a reality of our of Bosnian economy. We just can't afford to have equal access as researchers in Western countries, in the Western world. So usually this topic is often on the table. Of course, usually among the students, how could they do proper research if they don't have access to the content they need? So the need to rethink the context is is actually something that led me to the shadow libraries, pirate libraries, and issues about privileges. And of course, the topic of the commons, of the concept of the commons, because I believe that library equals commons. And if we remember that Elian Ostrom a few years ago was the first Nobel winner, woman who in the field of economics, who actually prove existence and of solidarity economy. I think that we should use such a concept to enhance our services, our approach to our users, and I believe the need for that kind of attitude we should find in figures or heroes of I would like to see them as heroes for librarians, as Aaron Schwartz, for example. Such ethics is what I really like to tackle when I speak about the future of the librarians.
Mario, I very much liked that phrase you used, shadow libraries. I'm not sure that I completely understand what shadow libraries are. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about what you mean by them.
The thing is that more and more academics are actually delivering for free their content for the pirate databases, let's say, in order to, let's say, practice the ethical imperative of sharing, of ethics of sharing. So I believe that we should not stay blind on the fact that we researchers and academics still have to, in the 21st century, redefine the concept of the authorship as well, and to that it's only about from how to think of sharing, of services in general.
I wanted to thank you both so much for your time and for your thoughtful insights and reflections. And I just wanted to leave a comment. I never even got around to discussing creative readers versus passive viewers. But what I was struck by with both of your presentations is that I think you're talking about human agency in libraries and being able to act with freedom in whatever environment you're in. And I'm just wondering if you had any closing comments.
I was moved to think, as a result of Mario's paper, by how much we are being pushed into doing digital things that we may not actually want to do. And I have a resistance to some of these things as a non-digital native, an older non-digital native myself, but it was good to have some kind of justification for my caution from Mario's paper, so I appreciated that. But it is absolutely right. We should not feel pressurized into doing things in this digital environment that we are not happy with. If we don't like Twitter, we don't need to do Twitter.
Yes.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
I admit that most of my thoughts actually came out from my frustrations with the reality of public institutions in my country. So when I realized it's really hard to push against the grain, I feel that at least I have satisfaction with the global community and to, let's say, radicalize my thinking and approach with the topics and using technology to connect me with those with whom I can share my deep beliefs.
Well, on that note, thank you both so much.